stepped or destroyed the Quran.
No,
pages.
I don't either.
That was just a lie to attack him, to stir up a crowd against him because he was a Christian.
Yeah, he wouldn't do that anyway.
No.
He had been doing that, doing this business, and apparently someone had it out against him for something.
Probably because he was a Christian.
Yeah, that's what it usually is. Because there's one thing about Muslims. They don't mind killing people, and they've got a lot of blood on their hands.
Yeah, that's sad. It's very, very tragic.
Okay.
92-year-old evangelizes Ukraine. This story comes to us from GodReports.com. As David Hathaway stood in front of 1,400 inmates of a Siberian prison in sub-zero weather 30 years ago, the prison chief scoffed, "What can God do to these men? I'm the only one that can deal with them. I beat them, I shoot them. How can your God change these men?" After worship, it was David's turn to address 200 mass murderers, 400 sex offenders, 800 criminals. "I spent a year in a prison like this," he said. "I know exactly what conditions are like. I know how they starve you, how they beat you. I know something you don't. I know how to get out of a prison." Fearing David was sparking a riot, the prison chief sprung to his feet and grabbed him by the arm. David had spent a year in a Czechoslovakian prison for smuggling Bibles into the Soviet bloc. "If we overcome the guards and release you from this prison, 80% of you will be back here in 3 months because the evil spirit that brought you in here will take 7 worse out with you. But God can change your life." After he preached about the power of God to change men, all 1,400 men fell on their knees and repented, praying to God. Out of the revival, 140 of them became pastors, evangelists, and missionaries. "After you left, all the men changed," he was told when he visited a year later. "All the officers changed." At 92 years of age, David is on his 8th decade of preaching. From 1961 to 1972, he smuggled 150,000 Bibles into the Soviet Union and Eastern European countries. He was busted on the Czech border in June 1972 and sentenced to 10 years in prison, during which he was tortured, he says. But David didn't serve the full sentence. Instead, he prayed. "God, 2,000 years ago when Paul and Silas, when Peter and John were in prison, they prayed and you worked a miracle and broke them out of prison," he prayed. "In response to prayer, I did not spend 10 years in prison," he relates. "I came out after 1 year because God sent the British Prime Minister and I flew home with Harold Wilson on the airplane." David first pastored in Dorking in Surrey. His ploy to sneak Bibles into communist countries was an overland tour to Israel that passed through the Iron Curtain. After his release from the Czech jail, David continued to preach in communist countries, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and even Czechoslovakia. He continued these labors after communism collapsed and the formerly atheistic countries opened the gospel. On June 22nd, he held a prayer rally with 10,000 believers in Ukraine amidst the war. He has survived 2 bouts with cancer, and David married Zina in 1955, and they have 3 daughters. Sadly, Zina passed away in 2014. Lord willing, he hopes to continue preaching until he is 100 years old, and I pray that God grants him his hope to continue preaching. That's an amazing story.
It
May
is.
God richly bless him.
You know, that reminds me of the other smuggler.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
And
Andrew? Was it Andrew something?
Well, remember Romania too?
Yeah.
And that's another ministry today, or used to be. But they would smuggle Bibles in and out, and
Brother Andrew was one of them.
Brother Andrew was the Bible smuggler, and in Romania, what was it, Open Doors?
I don't know.
I was thinking it was Open Doors. Is where their started, was with him, and they smuggled Bibles too. But the thing of it is, they were bringing in a load of Bibles, and the pastor was bringing them through. And the guard opened up the thing, and he says, "What do you got in there?" And he says, "I've got Bibles." He lifted up the trunk lid. The Bibles were right there, and he says, "Oh, you're just putting me on," and he laughed and closed the thing. He didn't see the Bibles, apparently.
Because God blinded his eyes.
Yeah, and so he got the Bibles in. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there, these people on the front lines. And the guy that you just talked about at 92, flying home with the Prime Minister, now that's big stuff.
Yes, it is.
Especially when they had you set for all those years in prison.
Yes.
So I think Christians today need to wake up and understand that God is able.
And he's true to his word.
He is.
And he hasn't changed. His word is still the same today as it was yesterday and will be tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we're doing a story about Turkey expelling 9 foreign Christians. Now, they changed the name of Turkey to Turkey's, it's Turkiye.
And that U in there has 2 dots on it. I don't know what that means or how to pronounce it.
It's part of their, and I don't know either. This is via International Christian Concern. Just go to persecution.org if you want to donate to them or, read more articles or stories. Recently, the highest court, the Constitutional Court, recently ruled that the government's expulsion of 9 foreign Christian leaders based on Secret Service reports does not violate their freedom of religion. 6 of the court's 13 judges dissented. Although the 9 believers had legally obtained residency permits, their perceived missionary activities prompted Turkey's Director of Immigration Management to apply N82 codes against a Christian. The codes designate the foreigners as risks to national security and prevent them from obtaining prior authorization to enter Turkey. The 9 expelled Christians can now appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Every human being has the natural right to freely practice their faith, said McKenna Wint, Advocacy Manager for International Christian Concern. This includes the right to share one's faith with their neighbor. The Turkish Constitutional Court's decision to label sharing the gospel as a threat to national security is wrong and in violation of international human rights law. We commend the bravery of the 6 dissenting judges and pray for a favorable outcome should the applicants appeal to the European Court of Human Rights.
That's right, amen.
The decision is the latest development that points to Turkey's efforts to curb the growth of Christianity within its boundaries. An estimated 8,000 Protestant Christians make up more than 170 communities throughout Turkey. For years, Christians in Turkey have endured persecution including forced deportations. According to the data from the Association of Protestant Churches, 250 people have been prevented from entering Turkey or deported since 2019. More than 96% of the Turks are Muslim. Fewer than 1% are Christian. Government authorities continue to take steps to erase Christianity culturally. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom recently recommended in its annual report that the U.S. Department of State place Turkey on a special watch list, which includes countries with severe religious freedom violations. Well, Erdogan has a lot of issues with Christianity.
Yeah, that's too bad.
And he's been wanting to establish, their control like they had a long time ago when Turkey had a caliphate going. And so that's about where we're at when we look at it. And I don't think it's going to get any better, but
nope. That's sad. It's heartbreaking that they don't want the gospel in there, but God's able to move with the Christians inside there to get his work accomplished in Turkey,
Yeah. Well, I'm looking, we're going to have to move ahead.
Where are we moving ahead to?
On your Tara read, because this other one is the Nazar Maseh again, so I've got to move ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to do mine?
Yeah.
Okay. Slaughtering Christians. When is it okay to do nothing with radical Islamists when radical Islamists slaughter innocent Christians? And this story comes to us from CBN News. ISIS has claimed responsibility for recent attacks in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, that resulted in the deaths of more than 80 Christians and the closure of several churches in the nation. The Islamic terrorist group said through a post on their Telegram channel, more than 60 Christians were killed, including a Congolese army officer, in an attack by Caliphate soldiers in eastern Congo. It was the latest in a series of attacks where jihadists with the ISIS-affiliated Allied Democratic Forces launched coordinated attacks in North Kivu province. The France press reports nearly 150 people have been killed by the group since the beginning of June, including on June 7th when at least 41 were killed, some of whom were found tied up and decapitated.
That's terrible.
It is. It's horrible. I don't know why it continues, why somebody doesn't stop it. A Congolese spokesperson told Reuters there were additional attacks in other areas, including Masawu village on June 4th that left 15 dead, Manzunzi village where 6 were found dead in a river, and 5 bodies were found in Kabweli and Manulis communities. More than 120 terror groups fight for power, land, and valuable mineral resources in the DCR, wreaking havoc in the region, African News reports. Were you going to say something?
Well, look at what you're reading. I mean, where are the nations Why do we have